Okay, so these are three calculated examples or three ways in which we can find or calculate pressure. Let's move on to increasing pressure. Our pressure depends on the force. It also depends on the area. Pressure is directly proportional to force and inversely proportional to area. What this means is that when we say pressure is directly proportional to force, whatever happens to pressure, the same happens to the force. So as force increases, pressure increases. So if we want to get a higher pressure, we need to raise the force. Now, when we say inversely proportional, what it means is that whatever happens to pressure, the opposite happens to the area. Or whatever happens to the area, the opposite happens to the pressure. So as area decreases, pressure increases. Now let's see how this is applied in our daily life. If we want to increase pressure, we can either decide to increase the force or decrease the area. Now these are two knives. The first one has a dull blade. The second one has a very sharp blade. Now with the dull blade, what it shows is that the end is a bit curved, so the area is a bit larger. Since the area is a bit larger, that means the pressure is lower. Okay, when area is bigger, pressure is lower. Therefore, if we want to use a dull blade for cutting, we need to increase the force. We need to increase the force because we need to apply more pressure before we can use this in cutting. The dull blade has a large area. If we want to use this to cut, the large area means the pressure is low. If we want to increase the pressure, that means we need to increase the force. So if you are using a dull blade for cutting, you always try much harder. You always try to use much force because the area is bigger and then it is reducing the pressure. So if you apply more force, you create a larger pressure. Or we can decide to sharpen the blade. If we sharpen the blade, we reduce the area. We reduce the area, so the slightest force will cause an increase in pressure. We reduce the area, so the slightest force will cause an increase in pressure. That is it for knives and cutting. Now let's go to sports. Footballers run on slippery grasses all the time. They need a firm grip whenever they play on the pitch. Therefore, their boots have studs that have pointed ends. These are pointed because once they step on it, it reduces the area and then the pressure is increased. When the pressure is increased, clearly the person can sink, the boots can sink into the soil to create the grip that is needed.